Her name wasn't on the list. The Manhattan skyline shimmered under moonlight, skyscrapers reflecting silver like silent witnesses. At the pinnacle of the opulent Hotel Lorraine, a charity gala unfolded. French champagne, whispered deals, designer gowns. The elites circled like constellations, orbiting wealth, power, and self-importance. Inside a sleek black limousine, Maya Johnson adjusted the emerald green gown, hugging her skin like a whispered prayer. Her curls were swept into a regal bun, her gaze calm, but her fingers fidgeted. Beside her, Ethan Hayes, tech billionaire, media phantom, and her husband, squeezed her hand with quiet resolve. They were opposites on paper. Born into affluence. She, the daughter of a schoolteacher and a construction worker from East Point, Georgia. But what bonded them wasn't charity or pity. It was recognition. Ethan saw Maya not as a novelty or rebellion, but as someone whose art revealed truths he couldn't name. She, in turn, saw past the fortune into the man, quietly dismantling parts of the system from within. Tonight, Maya was more than Ethan's guest. She was one of the gala's honorees for her visual work with marginalized communities. Murals that gave color to forgotten stories, streets, and faces. For once, she would be recognized not just by critics or locals, but by the so-called tastemakers of American culture. A seat at their table, earned, not given. But when they arrived, the doorman checked the list and said it flatly. "Miss Johnson, your name isn't here." It wasn't hesitation. It was certainty, the kind sharpened by intent. Ethan's fingers tightened around hers. Maya swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "Could you check again?" The doorman looked uncomfortable. "Sorry, I've checked twice." Maya had seen many versions of erasure. As a black woman, it came in silences, in closed doors, in the word uninvited dressed up as mistake. But this was calculated. She had been removed. From murals on crumbling Atlanta walls to sold-out exhibits. She had never needed permission to exist. Her work spoke for the voiceless. And yet, on the night she was meant to be honored, she stood unacknowledged, like her ancestors once did on lands they built but never owned. Ethan stepped forward, calm, cold. "Bring me the event coordinator." Around them, murmurs began. Stares. People noticed. Minutes later, a flustered man approached. "Mr. Hayes, welcome. There was a tech glitch. We'll fix it right away. Don't lie." Ethan interrupted. "She's on the program. She was on the donor board. You think I won't notice?" Maya could have ended it there, smiled, nodded, let it pass. It wouldn't be the first time someone tried to shrink her. But she stayed still. Not because of pride, but because of principle. This was no error. It was a decision. She thought of her mother's words growing up. "Read with the eyes of tomorrow, because that's where you'll live." Of her childhood murals, raised fists, joyful black girls, hidden history on public walls. Her art had always fought invisibility. And now, they were trying to pretend she had never existed. Ethan pulled out his phone. His voice was quiet, but his fingers typed with speed. Within minutes, his publicist had drafted the message. Ethan Hayes would be pulling his $3 million donation from the foundation. Details and the reason would follow, but Maya didn't flinch at the money. She cared only about the message. Across town, phones buzzed. Tweets multiplied. A photo appeared, Maya in front of one of her murals, chin high, hands speckled in paint. Ethan's caption read, "You can't erase someone who's already painted their name across the sky." Inside the gala, tension rippled like a snapped wire. Organizers scrambled. Too late. Maya stood still outside those glass doors, no longer waiting to be let in. She wasn't the one who needed to cross the threshold anymore. They were the ones who'd locked themselves inside a shrinking room of fading relevance. And just as the crowd began to part for her, someone familiar emerged, face pale, holding a tablet. "Ms. Johnson, there's something you should know," he said, voice low to Maya's brows furrowed. Ethan stepped beside her, his grip tightening. The man hesitated. Someone intervened. "You were intentionally removed from a list. Not by mistake. By directive." "Whose?" Ethan asked. Before the man could respond, another figure stepped out from the shadows behind the double doors. It was her, and Maya recognized her immediately. The woman smiled, not kindly, not apologetically, like someone used to winning. I warned them about her, she said softly, just loud enough for Maya to hear. You think murals and pity pieces buy you a place in this world? You're temporary, darling. Art fades. Maya looked at her for a long moment, then past her into the crowd inside. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She turned to Ethan, who was already preparing his next move. But as Maya took a step forward, eyes steady, breath controlled, the hotel lights flickered. A murmur rose. Then someone shouted, and the night took a turn no one, not even Maya, had seen coming. The impact was immediate. Inside the grand ballroom, the illusion cracked. Organizers scrambled for damage control. A rushed press release followed. It was a clerical mistake. Of course she was meant to be included, but the wound had already opened. The omission spoke louder than any apology. Maya stood at the entrance, her hand tucked gently into Ethan's. It's your call, he whispered. Her eyes swept the room. Velvet gowns, polished floors, chandelier light cascading over the privileged. She thought of the women erased before her, brilliant, brave, forgotten. To walk in was to reclaim space. To refuse was to expose the lie. She walked in. But not like they wanted her to. Her emerald dress shimmered under the lights, but her presence, not her fashion, commanded attention. Conversations faltered. Eyes turned. The absence of her name had become the centerpiece of the evening. Then something unexpected. The organizers offered her the stage. Not out of reverence, but panic. A patch on a hemorrhage. Still, she accepted. Not to thank them, but to confront them. She stepped up calm and rooted. No notes. No prepared speech. Just truth. My name is Maya Johnson, she said. And tonight I was not forgotten. I was erased. No music played. No cutlery clinked. The silence honored her more than any program would have. I'm not the first. Black women artists have always painted in shadows. We are silenced in brochures, in boardrooms, in ballot boxes. You do not forget us. You choose not to see us. A murmur rippled through the room. Some lowered their eyes. Some didn't move. She continued, steady. I walked through those doors not because you remembered me, but because I refused to disappear. Because I come from women who were denied entrance, denied light, yet created beauty anyway. Her gaze fell briefly on Ethan. His jaw clenched, his eyes soft and proud. I thank my husband, not for rescuing me, but for using his voice to amplify mine. He could have said nothing, but silence is its own violence. She reached into her clutch and pulled out a folded print of her mural. The woman on it stood tall, her eyes fierce, a child on her shoulders reaching upward. This is the work you forgot. This is the story you erased. But here I am. Here we are. A slow, hesitant clap. Then another. Not applause. Recognition. She nodded once and stepped down. Ethan was waiting at the edge of the crowd. He didn't speak. He simply wrapped her in his arms, holding the silence between them like something sacred. Then they turned to leave, but before reaching the exit, Ethan paused. The crowd watched. To the organizers, he said, voice even, the Hayes Foundation will no longer be affiliated with your institution. Gasps. Cameras clicked. We'll redirect our support toward grassroots collectives led by Black women. Transparent, equitable, unapologetic. And with that, he turned. They left without fanfare. Outside, the flashbulbs flared. Reporters shouted questions. Maya kept walking, chin high. She didn't speak for headlines. She spoke for the girl she used to be, the one who needed to know this kind of defiance was possible. .by morning, the story had gone viral. The forgotten honoree who spoke the truth. Hashtag surged. Hashtag Maya was not erased. News anchors dissected the institution's failings. The gallery issued a formal apology. Donors began pulling out. Within a week, the organization paused operations to reevaluate its values. Maya declined most interviews. When asked for a statement, she posted only, "None of us will be invisible again." Her inbox overflowed with invitations, talks, commissions, solo exhibitions. She accepted a few, but quietly redirected most to younger artists, first-time curators, and women like her. Gifted, unseen that a month later, Maya opened her next exhibit not in a gilded European hall, but at a modest cultural center in Brooklyn. Titled Presence, it showcased portraits of Black women, mothers, activists, artists, teachers, all painted in vibrant hues, all named in bold. No one would be anonymous. AT the opening. Ethan sat in the second row, phone in hand, smiling proudly as guests wandered, weeping, marveling. But the spotlight wasn't his. It never had been. And that, Maya knew, was the point. She floated through the room with quiet grace, answering questions, sharing stories. But near the end of the evening, she stopped in front of one piece. A small canvas in the corner. IT showed a little black girl with puffy braids and a paintbrush clutched in her hand. Her grin was gap-toothed. Her eyes beamed with possibility. It was Maya, age 7. She hadn't titled the painting. She didn't need to. This was what it meant to be seen. Remember who you were before the world tried to erase you, and to come home to her at last.